Welcome to Warriors of the World. Today, we will journey to the vast, hot savannas of South Africa to meet one of the most impressive armies in history, the Zulu Warriors. Picture yourself in the 19th century, surrounded by the African landscape, the sun blazing on the horizon, and the rhythmic sound of drums echoing in the air. Ahead of you, a line of fearless warriors, wielding sharp spears, enormous cowhide shields, and unshakable determination. These fearless warriors are not ordinary soldiers. They are the elite of the Zulu army, a force shaped by the rigor and discipline of their great leader, Shaka Zulu. You can feel the tension in the air, as if you are about to witness one of the most epic battles in history. Every warrior here has been trained to fight until the end, defending their kingdom with blood and sweat. This is the army that challenged empires, faced one of the greatest armies in the world, and, for a brief and glorious moment, won. Shaka Zulu, the man who transformed a small clan into one of the most powerful warrior nations on the continent, not only trained his men, he reformed them. He taught his warriors to use a new weapon, the Iklewa, a short, lethal spear that brought combat up close, face to face. And that wasn't all. He also changed the way armies were organized, implementing a strategy that revolutionized warfare in Africa. Picture yourself alongside these troops, marching with them into the unknown, knowing that every battle could be the last, but with the confidence that, under Shaka's leadership, victory always seemed within reach. In this episode, we will explore this fascinating warrior culture, understanding how the Zulus, with their spears and shields, left a deep mark on world history. Get ready to be amazed by the tactics, legends, and battles that shaped the destiny of a people and a nation. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this epic journey, to understand how a small clan in South Africa became one of the continent's greatest military powers. Imagine a young warrior named Shaka, born in a time of turmoil, where tribes fought each other for survival. Few could have predicted that he would become one of the greatest military strategists the world has ever seen. The historical backdrop was one of constant conflict between Zulu tribes and their neighbors. Land was fiercely contested, and resources were scarce. When Shaka rose to power in the early 19th century, he found a fragmented people, but with immense potential. His first task? To unify what had once been rival clans into one strong, cohesive army. Shaka was not just an exceptional warrior. He was a visionary leader. One of his great innovations was the creation of a new type of spear, the Iklewa, shorter and more effective for close combat. This weapon allowed Zulu warriors to quickly approach their enemies and eliminate them with precise blows. But Shaka knew that new weapons alone would not win battles. He reorganized the Zulu army, imposing strict discipline and intensive training, transforming his men into an unbeatable force. He also introduced the famous buffalo horn military formation, which enveloped the enemy from all sides, creating panic and chaos. The impact was devastating. Neighboring tribes that had once fought among themselves were now united under the Zulu banner, and the kingdom rapidly grew in size and power. With that, Shaka began his series of expansionist campaigns, conquering territories and subjugating rival tribes. The Zulus didn't just defeat their enemies on the battlefield. They integrated them into their army, further increasing their power. Thus, the Zulu Empire was born, a nation forged by war, innovation, and the strategic brilliance of one man. Now that we understand how Shaka Zulu transformed a scattered tribe into a military powerhouse, it's time to explore the traits that made the Zulu warriors an unbeatable force. To comprehend the impact they had on the battlefield, we need to examine what made them so feared by their enemies. Their rigorous training, their innovative weapons for the time, and their almost unbreakable discipline. From a young age, Zulu boys were raised in a culture deeply tied to warfare. Zulu society viewed military service as an honor, and every boy was prepared from childhood to become a warrior. At 14, they underwent an initiation ritual that marked the beginning of their life as soldiers in training. From that moment on, their life was dedicated to the army. The training was extremely rigorous. Shaka Zulu, who led the army, was known for demanding nothing less than perfection from his warriors. Running barefoot over rough, rocky terrain was a common practice, strengthening the feet and increasing the men's endurance. Shaka even banned the use of sandals so that his soldiers could move more agilely and endure long marches without losing stamina. The warriors had to run miles every day, often in formation, to ensure they were capable of covering great distances and surprising their enemies with quick, unexpected attacks. Besides their physical endurance, the Zulu warriors' skill in hand-to-hand combat was one of their greatest strengths. Shaka introduced a revolution in the weapons his warriors used. He replaced the traditional spear, which was used to throw from afar, with a short, lethal spear called the Iklewa. The name of this new type of spear is a reference to the sound it made when pulled from an enemy's body after a fatal strike. The Iklewa was designed for close-quarters combat, allowing the Zulus to engage directly with their opponents and avoid losing their weapons, which could be crucial in a long, fierce battle. The Zulu shield, known as Isandhlwana, was equally formidable. Made of cowhide and large in size, it offered impressive protection, covering almost the entire body of the warrior. But it wasn't just a defensive shield. In battle, the Zulu warriors used it aggressively. They would push their opponents with the shield to destabilize them, then strike with the Iklewa in the gap created. The coordinated use of these two weapons was crucial to the Zulus' success in their campaigns. The discipline of the Zulu warriors was also a decisive factor. Shaka Zulu instituted a strict hierarchical system within his army, where each group of warriors, or impi, had a specific role. Within each impi, there were subdivisions by age and experience, ensuring that the most experienced warriors were on the front lines, while younger ones served as reinforcements and scouts. This organization allowed for unusual flexibility in battles, with each part of the army knowing exactly where to be and what to do at any given moment. This rigid organization was also reflected in the warriors' code of conduct. Deserters or those who failed to follow orders were severely punished, and the fear of dishonoring their commander or family was enough to keep the Zulu soldiers entirely focused on their mission. Loyalty to the king and the army was a supreme value, and warriors often preferred death over living with the dishonor of defeat. But physical training and discipline weren't the Zulus' only weapons. The psychology of war was also on their side. Shaka Zulu made a point of cultivating fear in his enemies. The fame of his warriors, their imposing presence, and the deafening sound of Zulu war cries, known as Isabongo, were as intimidating as their spears. Before an attack, the warriors would chant and shout, their voices echoing across the hills, psychologically destabilizing their opponents. Many enemies fled upon hearing the roar of the Zulu troops before the first spear was even thrown. The Zulu warriors were more than soldiers. They were a symbol of a united nation, forged by war and loyalty to their king. In every battle, they carried the pride of their people and the determination to protect their land at any cost. With their combination of physical training, technological innovation, and relentless discipline, the Zulu warriors etched their name into history as one of the most efficient and feared military forces of the 19th century. Though Shaka Zulu is the name most associated with the rise of the Zulu warriors, he was not the only one to mark this history. The Zulu kingdom produced other great leaders and warriors who helped consolidate the power and glory of their nation. Let's explore three legendary figures: Shaka, Dingaan, and Sethweyo. Shaka Zulu, the most famous, was the architect of the empire. He was born into a small, marginalized clan, but thanks to his military prowess and political cunning, Shaka reorganized the Zulu army and expanded the territory like no other leader before him. His legacy extended beyond battles. Shaka reshaped Zulu society, integrating enemy tribes and establishing a strict military code. He created a strong national identity, where military service was the key to citizenship. Under his command, the Zulus became a feared force across southern Africa. After Shaka's death, power was assumed by his half-brother, Dingaan, who ruled the kingdom during a time of increasing external pressures, especially from European colonizers. Dingaan proved to be a controversial leader. While he continued Shaka's military tradition, his reign was marked by betrayals and massacres, such as the episode of Piet Retief's death, a Boer leader, which led to direct conflict with white settlers. Finally, Sethweyo, Dingaan's nephew, was the last great Zulu king to command the army in an all-out war against a European power. Sethweyo led the Zulus during the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879, where the Zulu warriors, despite their bravery, suffered a devastating defeat against the British and their modern weapons. However, he will always be remembered for the stunning victory at the Battle of Isandhlwana, where his army inflicted one of the greatest defeats in British colonial history. These men, with their achievements and failures, shaped Zulu history and left a legacy that resonates to this day. Among the many innovations brought by Shaka Zulu to his army, the most famous and decisive was the battle tactic known as the buffalo horn. This attack strategy demonstrated not only Shaka's military brilliance but also the incredible discipline and coordination of the Zulu warriors. Imagine yourself on the battlefield, watching hundreds of warriors moving as one organism, encircling like the horns of a fierce buffalo ready to strike. The buffalo horn consisted of three main parts. At the center, known as the chest, were the bulk of the Zulu forces, the most experienced and well-trained warriors. These soldiers advanced directly towards the enemy, absorbing their attack and engaging them in hand-to-hand combat. While the chest faced the enemy's front line, the wings or horns silently flanked both sides of the enemy, surrounding them in a devastating manner. These horns were made up of younger, faster warriors, whose mission was to quickly encircle the enemy and cut them off from the sides. Once the flanks were controlled, the enemy found themselves trapped on all sides, unable to escape. From that point, the Zulu warriors delivered decisive and fatal blows. While the horns did their job, the tail or rearguard, composed of the most experienced warriors, stayed behind, ready to reinforce any part of the army that weakened. If the chest began to falter, the tail would intervene, restoring the strength of the attack. The genius of this tactic lay in its simplicity and efficiency. The enemy was forced to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously, leading to confusion and chaos. The Zulu warriors, on the other hand, acted with incredible coordination, moving as one entity. This devastating combat method proved nearly unbeatable against neighboring tribes and, in many cases, even against European colonial forces. This strategy, based on the natural behavior of wild animals that surround their prey, was incredibly effective for close combat, one of the Zulus' greatest strengths. The arrival of Europeans in Zulu territory brought a new era of conflicts and transformed the balance of power in southern Africa. The British, eager to expand their control and influence over the southern continent, encountered one of the most formidable armies in the region, the Zulus. This encounter led to one of the most iconic wars of the colonial era, the Anglo-Zulu War, which began in 1879 and would be remembered as one of the most important moments of African resistance against European imperialism. At the center of this conflict was King Cetshwayo, who inherited the Zulu throne after the death of his father, Mpande. Cetshwayo tried to maintain good relations with the British, but tensions were inevitable. Colonial expansion and the British desire to control the land and resources of the Zulu kingdom eventually led to confrontation. In January 1879, the British issued an ultimatum demanding the complete submission of the Zulus. Cetshwayo, proud and determined to maintain his people's independence, refused. The war began shortly afterward, and the first major confrontation between Zulu and British forces took place at the Battle of Isandhlwana on January 22, 1879. The result was a surprise to the entire world. The Zulus, armed mainly with spears and shields, defeated a well-equipped British army with firearms. This victory was a moment of pride for the Zulus and a monumental shock to the British Empire, which was not accustomed to losing to non-European forces. However, the Zulus' success was short-lived. Although the victory at Isandhlwana showcased the strength of Zulu resistance, the British army quickly reorganized and returned with massive reinforcements, along with far superior weaponry. In July 1879, at the Battle of Ulundi, the Zulus suffered a devastating defeat. The technological superiority of the British, with their long-range weapons and heavy artillery, ultimately crushed Cetshwayo's resistance. After the final defeat, the Zulu kingdom was dismantled and divided, and Cetshwayo was captured and exiled. The era of Zulu independence had come to an end, but the warrior spirit and the memory of resistance against European imperial power remained alive in history. Although the Zulu warriors are best known for their prowess on the battlefield, their lives extended far beyond war. Zulu culture was rich and deeply rooted in traditions that balanced peaceful daily life with constant preparation for combat. From birth to death, a Zulu's life was filled with rituals, values, and practices that strengthened the community and upheld loyalty to the kingdom and its leader. The social organization of the Zulus was centered around the king, or Inkosi, who was not only the military leader but also the most important spiritual figure in society. The Zulu people believed that the king had a direct link to the ancestors and the spirits that protected the tribe. Therefore, obedience to the king and his commanders was not just a matter of military discipline, but a spiritual and moral duty. The family was the foundation of Zulu society. The villages, or kraals, were made up of large families living together, creating strong bonds of unity. The family structure mirrored the military hierarchy, where elders and the wise guided the younger ones. For boys, life was a constant training from an early age. Games and activities played a fundamental role in education, as many of these activities were designed to develop important skills for adulthood, such as strength, speed, and leadership. Religion also played a central role in the lives of the Zulus. They strongly believed in the power of ancestral spirits, who protected the tribe and guided their actions. Respect for the dead and ancestral rituals was intertwined in all spheres of life. The fear of dishonoring the ancestors kept the warriors and the population in strict and reverent behavior. When they were not fighting, Zulu warriors also engaged in activities that strengthened the bond between their peers and the kingdom. Festivals and celebrations were important moments to honor leaders and gods and to reinforce the group's unity. During these festivities, music, chants, and dances, like the traditional Indlamu, showcased the strength and energy of the Zulu people, while also celebrating their heritage. Thus, the Zulu warriors did not live solely for war. Their lives were deeply connected to their culture, family, and spirituality. The image of the Zulu warriors has crossed borders and centuries, inspiring works in cinema, literature, and even video games. These cultural representations, as diverse as they may be, help keep alive the memory and fascination for this impressive warrior class. From the epic film Zulu to Shaka's appearance in game franchises, the Zulus are constantly revisited, sometimes romanticized, other times stereotyped, but always portrayed as symbols of bravery and resistance. One of the first and most well-known films about the Zulu warriors is the classic Zulu, 1964, starring Michael Caine. The film dramatizes the famous Battle of Rorke's Drift, where a small British garrison resisted the siege of thousands of Zulu warriors. Although the film was praised for its production and scale, it also received criticism for offering a Eurocentric view of the conflict, focusing more on the British soldiers and portraying the Zulus in a simplified way, as an implacable, homogeneous force. Still, the film had a lasting impact, solidifying the image of the Zulu warriors as formidable and strategic adversaries. Another standout work is the television series Shaka Zulu, 1986, which tells the story of the famous Zulu king from his childhood to his rise to power. This series was a milestone for many audiences who had never heard of Shaka, and it brought a more detailed and complex view of his leadership, military vision, and the lasting impact of his innovations. The series portrayed Shaka as a military genius but also as a tragic and, in many aspects, brutal figure. Its international airing helped build the legend of Shaka as a larger-than-life figure, inspiring curiosity and debate about his legacy. In video games, the Zulus appear in popular franchises like Civilization, where Shaka Zulu is portrayed as a relentless military leader. In games like Civilization 6, he is one of the playable leaders, and his ability to quickly mobilize troops makes him a formidable threat on the battlefield, a playful representation of his historical strategies. Here, Zulu culture is primarily recognized for its military power, being exalted for the resistance and organization of the troops, characteristics that define their empire. The Zulus are also mentioned in various literary works, many written during the colonial period, like the books of H. Rider Haggard, who wrote adventure novels such as King Solomon's Mines. These books often portrayed the Zulus in a mythical way, oscillating between noble savagery and threatening danger. Even today, the figure of Shaka Zulu and his warriors continues to inspire modern adaptations, whether in film productions, TV series, or new games, keeping alive the memory of this warrior class that faced empires and changed history. The legacy of the Zulu warriors is undeniably enduring and profound, spanning centuries and borders. Even after the collapse of the Zulu Empire, its impact continues to resonate in various spheres of society, from African culture to modern politics. The Zulus, known for their military skill, discipline, and loyalty, left a legacy that goes beyond their victories or defeats on the battlefield. The mark these warriors left in history is vast and multifaceted, reflecting both their resistance against colonialism and the cultural pride that persists today. In contemporary South Africa, the legacy of the Zulu warriors is still deeply felt. The Zulu kingdom became a symbol of resistance against colonial oppression, especially due to the bravery demonstrated in historic battles like Isandhlwana. This battle, one of the few where an African force defeated a European power on African soil, has become a point of pride and a reference for resistance movements. In the 20th century, during apartheid, many South Africans looked to the Zulu past for inspiration in their own struggle against oppression, associating the Zulu warrior spirit with resilience and the fight for freedom. The legacy is also reflected in modern South African politics. The Zulu nation still exists as a predominant ethnic group in the country, and the Zulu king remains an important symbolic figure. Although the Zulu monarchy no longer holds the power it once did, respect and reverence for its historical role persist. In the post-apartheid period, Zulu identity and pride in their warrior heritage have been used as symbols of unity and resistance. Political figures, such as Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who founded the Inkatha Freedom Party, often reference the Zulus' glorious past as a way to rally support and strengthen ethnic identity in a fragmented political landscape. Culturally, the Zulu heritage is celebrated through festivals, ceremonies, and traditional dances, like the famous Indlamu dance, which is a visual demonstration of strength and coordination, essential qualities that define the Zulu warriors. These traditions are proudly preserved, linking the current generation to their warrior ancestors. The dance, chanting, and ritual attire used during these ceremonies are not just a commemoration of the past but a continuous affirmation of Zulu identity. Moreover, the impact of the Zulu warriors extends far beyond Africa's borders. In the African diaspora, particularly in countries like the United States and Brazil, the name Zulu has become synonymous with strength and resistance. In the Afro-American context, movements like the Black Panthers and artists like Afrika Bambaataa, founder of the Zulu nation, used the name Zulu to represent the struggle for civil rights and equality, associating themselves with the strength and resistance that the Zulu warriors symbolize. This echo of Zulu culture on other continents shows the potency and reach of its legacy. Thus, the legacy of the Zulu warriors is not just a story of military victories and defeats. It is a testament to the perseverance of a people who, even after the destruction of their kingdom, continue to inspire generations in their fight for freedom and identity. Throughout history, the Zulu warriors have been depicted in contrasting ways. For some, they are heroes who fought bravely to protect their people and land from foreign invaders. For others, their brutal tactics and the relentless way they expanded their empire placed them in the position of violent conquerors. But, after all, who were the Zulu warriors? Heroes defending freedom or villains spreading terror? This is a question that raises many reflections and debates, and perhaps there is no simple answer. On one hand, there's no denying the heroic spirit that guided the Zulus. They fought for their survival, for their culture, and for their land. Shaka Zulu, the leader who transformed a small group into a military powerhouse, is admired for his innovation, determination, and leadership ability. He not only reorganized the Zulu army but also unified scattered tribes, creating a formidable African empire at a time of increasing European interference. His warriors, willing to face much better-equipped enemies, represented African resistance to colonialism, something that is widely celebrated to this day. However, this narrative of heroism is accompanied by another, which paints the Zulus in a different light. The expansion of Shaka's empire was marked by aggressive campaigns against neighboring tribes, resulting in thousands of deaths and the destruction of villages. Shaka used psychological terror tactics to maintain control, severely punishing any act of disobedience. His methods, as efficient as they were on the battlefield, led to an era of fear among both his enemies and his own people. His quest for power, according to some, was filled with unnecessary bloodshed. This duality between heroism and violence resonates strongly when we look at the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. The initial Zulu victory at the Battle of Isandhlwana is considered a moment of pride and resistance against an imperialist power. However, the subsequent conflict with the British, and the defeats that followed, paint a picture of inevitable tragedy, the end of an era of independence in exchange for colonial rule. The Zulus' defeat and the eventual capture of Cetshwayo marked the beginning of the end of their empire. Here, once again, the question arises: were they victims of a cruel invader, or were they defeated by their own expansionist drive? Perhaps the answer lies in the eyes of the beholder. The Zulu warriors are, at once, symbols of resistance and figures of power. Their deeds and history offer a vast field of reflection, both on the sacrifices necessary to protect a nation and the costs of power and conquest. Heroes or villains? Perhaps both. What matters in the end is that their story continues to provoke questions, inspire fights for freedom, and remind the world of the complexity of the human condition. And what do you think about the Zulu Warriors? Subscribe and leave your opinion in the comments. Join the discussion. Does the pursuit of power justify the means? Or is the defense of land, culture, and freedom above all else? Stay with us to explore more of these incredible stories of the great warriors of history.